Hello everyone and welcome back to Angie B Cards and Crafts. Today we're going to look at how we can use all these lovely products to make the background for this kind of a thing. So these are just little key rings that I've made from a very basic tag. The basic tag starts off as an MDF tag, and then I've done the background of it, which is what we're going to look at today, and then added little bits of ephemera to it, trinkets, etc. On this one I've gone more with cogs. So you can actually add whatever you want, but this is about actually getting the background that you want. So it's looking at the different textures that you can get in your background. So the products that we're going to be looking at today are Cosmic Shimmer products. So we have 3 different types of paste. The first one is Strata Paste. Now when I first got this and I looked at what it was and I looked inside, and it just looks like a lump of gritty stuff, and then there's little bits of mica flakes in it, so that made me think, that's going to be shiny and sparkly, and what can I do with it? And I actually didn't like it, so I put it to one side and I forgot about it because it just annoyed me. So I've come back to it and I've had another play and now quite like it. The next thing we're going to look at is this beautiful creamy substance called lava paste. Now this is the most amazing kind of thing that you did. The first thing I ever made with lava paste was this, and all these little lumps and bumps are courtesy of the lava paste, and I just really love that effect, but that's not quite the effect we're going for today. The next thing is structure paste. Now anyone who's used any structure paste, a lot of them are just very, very similar. I don't have a preference. I've got several different ones in my crafty stash, and it's whichever one I happen to come upon that I use, but I'm sticking with the Cosmic Shimmer range. These are a nice range of 3 products that actually came together in a pack, so you can play with all of them rather than having just one big tub. You can mix and match. So that's how we're going to get the shape, and then we're looking at how we're going to get the colour. So we're going to do something called dry brushing. But first of all, prior to that, we're going to actually just do a matte black gesso. So I've got my lovely big tube of Pebeo gesso. Love this stuff, but it is really messy. The black gets everywhere, but I do love it. And then we're going to dry brush on initially with chalk paints. So chalk paints are opaque, so that means you can't see through them. You put them on and they sit there. Then you put another layer on and that'll sit on top. So we're going to start the process of getting some colour in the background, and it's about adding a depth of colour and about trying to add lots of different colours, because there's very few things in the natural world that is just one unique colour. It tends to be a mishmash of lots of different colours. You just need to look at, if you look at a rusty nail, it's not just all rust coloured, it's lots of different colours. So that's why we're going to start with these in the background, and then we're going to add these beautiful colours. Now I love these. These are pigment paints, which means they're translucent. And what happens with these is you put them on top and they give a hint of that colour. And the thicker you put them, the more of that colour you will see, but you can still see the other colours coming through underneath. And they give that really nice kind of finish. You can see not the shimmery finish, but the coloured finish that's coming through here. That's where that's coming from. The actual shiny finish is coming from using a wax, which I'll show you at the end. Okay, so to start with, we need to put our paste onto our tags. So I'm going to do 2 different tags. Okay, you can use this kind of tag, you can use circle tags, you can use paper tags, you can use whatever you want. You can use this product on canvases, on cards, on papers, whatever you want to use it on. I like to use it on tags because you've got that something solid that you can then take away with you. So we're going to use the trusted palette knife to apply it. As you can see, mine could do with a clean. It does occasionally get a clean, but everything's usually rock solid on it, so it doesn't transfer, so I'm not overly worried. And then we are going to start with the lava paste and the strata paste. So I'll start with the lava paste because I just think it's really cool. So with this, you just put, it's so, so nice to work with. It's like a yogurt consistency. So you pop it on and just, you don't want it too thick. Basically with this, the thicker it is, the more bubbles you're going to get and the more this kind of an effect you're going to get. So if you just put quite a thin layer, and it's good to get it all the way around the edges. So it's like carefully buttering a nice piece of toast, but you want it to, you can make it as varying in undulations as you like, but remember, the thicker it is, the more you're going to get. And then just clean off around the edges, put what's left on your knife back in your pot. And don't forget to put your lid on your pot before you do anything else, because otherwise it'll dry out. Now there's a little bit stuck in the hole, so I've got a very tatty pokey tool that I just go in from behind and just pull that out and get rid of it. And it just neatens it up slightly. You don't have to do that, you can leave it as is if you want to, that's just my preference. Right, so then, trust a heat tool, get it up to temperature, and then just watch it bubbling up. You can see it starting to bubble. I do love this stuff. It starts to go a whiter colour, you can see around the edges, and then you can see it starting to bubble. So as I say, the thicker you put it on, the more size you're going to get to your lumps and bumps and bubbles. So it depends really what effect you're going for. If you're into doing planet surfaces, you might be looking for something like this, in which case put it on more with a pouncy movement or even using a sponge, and you're going to get a thicker effect. Now when you touch it, it's so lightweight, it's kind of a little bit spongy, but that's it dry, that's ready to use now. So with the Strata Paste, again, so this is the one, I'm going to apply it with a palette knife, but this is the one that I was saying had the mica, and you can just see there's little chunks sticking up, that's the mica powder. And the things that, it's not tiny pieces of mica, it's decent sized flakes. And the thing I like about this, now that I've had a proper play with it, is the fact that you can get the lumps and bumps that you want. The flakes aren't there to give it shimmer and shine, which I'd always thought mica means shimmer, but it isn't about that with this product. It's more about giving you an uneven and undulating surface depending on what type of project you're going for. And you can see there's little bits are beginning to stick up that are the flakes. And again, you can put on as thick or as thin a layer as you want. The thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to dry. Don't worry about going over the hole. You can either, number one, leave it because you don't want the hole to be used, or do what I'm going to do in a moment, which is just poke the hole back through on itself. So doing that, and then just pushing it out to the sides. Now you can use your fingers, it doesn't matter if it gets on your fingers. Don't get it in your eyes, don't get any of these in your eyes because it can be troublesome. So that's the kind of effect we're looking for there. Okay, so I have done a couple of others. I'm going to put that one to one side because I've actually got one that's already dry. So this is what it's like when it's dry. It doesn't take long to dry. Again, I've just used the heat gun on that to dry it off. And then on this one, what I've done is just partially put some on and left the rest smooth. And that's just to give you a variation of effect on your tag. You can choose to do the whole thing, part of the thing, mix and match the two different products, or even using the structure paste as well, use 3 different products. And here's another couple of tags that I've done with the lava paste. So that's the one I've just done, and these are 2 that I did earlier on. So it just shows you the varying sizes. So this is the thicker and less carefully applied lava paste. There's lots of lumps and bumps. This is slightly bigger bubbles than this one, but this one's more undulating. So it depends how you apply it. What I would say is if you get these products, have a really good play because they're really good fun. Okay, so the next thing that I need to do with these is the joys of black paint. Now, I have got a stipple brush here or a stencil brush. You can get these relatively cheaply on Amazon or such places. Try and get ones that aren't going to just suddenly start shedding pieces of them, because you don't actually want to get bristles into your project. So I'm just going to squirt a small amount, although this never seems to, oh, it's giving me a small amount today. It doesn't usually give me a small amount. Small amount of black paint onto my mat. And the reason that I'm using the stipple brush is because this is an undulating surface. You want to get right down into it all. And you can see none of it's coming off. I'm not cracking any bits off. You can be really rough with this. So this is the Strata Paste, and it is quite solid. And don't be afraid to be quite rough with it. It's absolutely fine. It's not delicate, let's say. It can look it in places, but it's actually really solid. With the lava paste, what I found is sometimes if the little bobbles and bally bits are too big, they will come off as you're doing this layer. So you sometimes have to be, particularly if you're going for the larger bubbles, be a little bit more delicate. But with this, there's no need to be overly delicate. So you want to try and make it so you can't see any white bits. Okay, I'm going to give it a quick blast and just check if there are any bits that I've missed. I'm not worried about that piece that's going over the hole a little bit, because anything that I use to attach this to is going to hang from the top anyway, so it's not that important. The reason that I'm drying this and keeping the hold of the paintbrush is I've got a funny feeling there's going to be some bits that will show up once it's dry. You don't always see the white bits when it's wet. So give it a quick blast, get it nice and dry, and then you can start to see, so there's a few little white bits under here, so I've not quite gone in at an angle, so I'm going to put down a little bit more black paint and just try and come in and get all these bits. I'm not overly worried about the edges. Now it's up to you what you do with the edges of this. You can choose to just leave them as they are. Because these are laser cut, they've got kind of a brown tinge to them. If I get one of my unused ones, so it's brown tinge just from the burn of the laser when it's been cut out. So it can look absolutely fine just like that. But what you can do is paint on them if you want to. Personally, I find painting on the edges of things a real pain. I just get frustrated with it because usually there's just a bit you've missed and then you end up going back in again and again. So I like to use gilding wax on the edges because it's easy to apply. It gives you a little bit of sheen and draws the eye in a little bit to your project, and it dries pretty much straight away. So I prefer to use gilding wax, but that's just personal preference. So just stick this in a bit of water, get rid of the black paint. There we go. Right, I'm just going to clean up the bit of black paint that's left here. Squirty bottle and raggy. What more does a girl need? So I do try and keep my craft mat reasonably clean, but I did have to give it a good scrape before I started videoing this because it had all sorts on it from playing over the last few days. Right, again, another quick blast. Let's make sure we get it nice and dry. Again, I'm starting to see some little bits that I've missed, but I'm not going to be overly concerned about that because you don't want to see me constantly just going in, putting black ink on. And what you can do when we're dry brushing, which is the next thing I'm going to do, it doesn't matter because we're using a pale colour to start with, so that's going to actually mask anything that's an issue. Okay, so this is called Grey Sky and it's matte chalk paint from Cosmic Shimmer. Now I got these quite a while ago and I know some paints can be troublesome, and what I found with some of these is that they'd actually split and the oil was sitting at the top, but as soon as I've given them a shake, they've been absolutely brilliant. Just break that top bit off. Now some people keep those little top bits off their paint personally. I've not got to that stage just yet because I keep enough stuff as it is. So with dry brushing, I'm going to use good old faithful raggy. I think this is my third raggy today, so. And it's literally about just getting a tiny little bit of paint on your brush and then taking most of it off and then applying it to your project. So you can just see it's going to give a nice coating of pale colour. So a tiny little bit on the end of your brush, wipe it off and then apply it over your project. So it's up to you what colours you use. Excuse me. What I tend to do is start with this light colour, whether it be, this is a grey, you could use white gesso or white acrylic paint or white chalk paint. This is to get your base. So this is the start of building it up. So you're still going to see some black areas because you're not doing a thick layer. And you're going to get different, you can see where it's sticking up more and where it's edges, you're getting a more distinct amount of colour. So the other thing you don't want to do is just go up and down in the same direction because your lumps and bumps are going in all different directions. So you want to try and cover each of the lumps and bumps. Okay. So that's that. I'm going to leave this little bit of paint here because I may well use it again. Because what can happen sometimes is you get a bit enthusiastic, a little bit heavy-handed, and suddenly you find out you've got a splodge that's way too pale and you don't want it. So you can go back over with the black, dry it off, and then add it in again. So don't panic. There's ways around if you start thinking, oh, I've done it wrong. Okay, so this comes from the Andy Skinner range, as do the three pastes that we're looking at. This is Ocean Breeze. Now, many, many years ago, I had the fortune of seeing Andy Skinner. He was doing a demonstration at Inspirations in Preston. And I was just mesmerised because it was really my introduction to steampunk, seeing what he was doing. And I've loved it ever since. So what we're doing with this colour is exactly the same, but we're not doing it on all of it. So we're just choosing little bits. Now I've put out absolutely loads of paint here for what I'm wanting. And normally what I would do is get out one of my art journals and start doing something with that paint in an art journal. But seeing as I'm doing a video, and I'm sure you don't want to watch me slapping paint onto art journal pages just to clean it up, I'm going to waste a little bit. So you can see that little bit that was going across there, it's just beginning to come off because it's a little mica flake. So just snap it away and add a little bit of colour. There we go. Added a bit too much, so we'll just go back in and dry brush it out. Okay, so it's still not really looking terribly exciting. But I do quite like it at this point, if I'm honest. What we're going to do now, just put that to one side, get my water bottle, squirt these and give them a wipe, just to get rid of them. So, the next stage is using the pigment paint. Oops. So, I have 3 colours of pigment paint and we're going to use all of them. I tend to start off with the yellow, then go on to the red and then go on to the blue. The exact names of these are Transparent Yellow Iron Oxide, Quinacridone Gold, that was a tough one, and Cobalt Teal Hue. Now this is just one of my favourite colours of all time in anything. I'd have furniture in this and everything. I love it. Anyway, so we'll start off with the Transparent Yellow Iron Oxide. We're just going to, again, doing the dry brushing, so we're just going to put a little dot. Just give it a shake to get it down. There we go. Little dot of paint there. And remember, with paint, you can add more. You don't have to put out loads to start with. You can always add. So we're going to do the same concept, having the raggy at the side, get rid of most of it, and then we're just going to go in and over the top. So you need to build this up. So it's in the title of the colour, it's transparent. So you're not going to see an awful lot happening. until you get a little bit more of this colour on. And what I sometimes do instead of using the raggy with this is just stretch it out onto my craft mat and then add it, so you can start seeing a little bit more. Again, you don't want this everywhere, so this isn't a complete overcoat. And it is about judging how much of a layer you want. So on that last one, I've just put it onto the raggy and then gone on to the project because I didn't want it quite as heavy. And I'm just going to put a little bit up at the top, and then I'm going to get my next colour. So you can't really see an awful lot of yellow on that, but it's there, and it's about doing the different colours and getting the overall effect. So this is the word that I can't say without reading. Quinacridone Gold. Fabulous word, that. And this is, again, a lovely rich colour, but you can see as soon as you start pulling it out that the colour is actually translucent. You can still see underneath it as soon as I start pulling it out. So it's not going to hide any of those base colours, but you can see there it's starting to highlight areas, but you can still tell there's other colours underneath. And this is just, it's entirely up to you where you put the paint. It doesn't matter. There's no rules in this. Again, the same with as with the base coat. What you're doing is actually putting the paint in all directions as you're doing it, so that it's covering all the little bits. It's picking up all those little undulations as you want it to. So then we're going to put the third colour out, which is the Cobalt Teal Hue. Okay. And again, the same again. You can start to see this is beginning to build up. And it takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of patience to do it. But when you start seeing it building and start seeing what happens, the bit that I like, I'm going to go over this bit because this has got some of the iron oxide on it. I'm going to now go over it with the blue, and you can see it just alters the colour, so you get more of a green than a blue. And that's what I really like about these, is you can just mix them to make them look as you want them to look. And it's personal preference as to where you put them. I'll just take a little bit off that. I want a little bit over here. Apologies, the light's not brilliant in here today. I feel like I'm getting my hand in the way. I'm going to have to review my setup, I think, because I feel like I'm blocking the light a little bit. So we can now go in and add some more of the others. You can even, the thing that I like to do is mix them, so you start getting a completely different colour. So you can see that green coming through now. So that's a completely new colour now that you're getting, that you can start to add on, and you've not had to invest in an alternative paint. So I think this is starting to look quite nice. Rather like it. Right, so the finishing touch, which I've forgotten to get out, bear with me 1 second, is the Pebeo Gilding Wax. Now I have had this for probably about 6 or 7 years, and I use it regularly, and hardly any has gone. This stuff lasts forever, and it smells gorgeous. I love it. So with this, you've got two options for applying it. You can do the good old-fashioned, let's stick our finger in it, put it down on a surface, and then start going over. So that gives you one look. Another look, which I don't use as often, is to actually use a brush. So I'm just going to use this brush with the colour on. It doesn't matter if it's the same brush. They all wash off quite nicely. So I'm literally just going to put a little bit, and again, brush it off on the mat, and then just choose where I want it to shine. So I'm intentionally just going for the higher bits and just putting little bits of shimmer onto the higher bits. because that's where, if you were rubbing over it, that's where you would hit. And I always think this looks rather like the surface of a planet. I do like this look. So I'm pretty much there now. And just do a gentle overall. There's not a lot left on, so I'm not worried about putting too much on. It's just an overall look. There we go. Right, I'm just going to very quickly clean up this little bit of mess. As I say, if I wasn't doing a video, I would actually be putting all of that into one of my art journals, but you don't want to see me doing that. So this is the tag. Where's my other ones? That's similar to what's in the background here. You can see I've got more yellow here. That's because I used more of this one in it. So you get whatever colours you want. The other things that I've been playing with were using just various chalk paints over the top rather than using paler chalk paints, sorry, so more vibrant ones. Not paler, more vibrant, more bright, that's the word I'm looking for, brighter chalk paint. So this is greens and pinks and blues on it, which gives a very different look. It's not as grungy, but it's still got that textural appearance. And the other thing that I had to go at with the more vibrant ones was just onto the flat gessoed surface. So I just took one of the circles, put a layer of gesso on it, and then just dry brushed that over the top. And I think that looks really nice. I did that as well with one of the tags, which again, I think it gives it a nice look. I've not decided what to put on top of those ones yet. So for going on top of here, again, something which I've had in my stash for many, many moons is some buttons. Believe it or not, these are buttons. And they're all to do with sewing. I've not got any more of these left, but it started off as part of this set. And I literally just chopped that back bit off and then did exactly the same process of putting gesso on it and then started to colour it with the different chalk paints and with the pigment paints so that it marries in with the overall background. This tape measure comes as part of an All and Create stamp, which I then stamped out in brown, cut into strips, wet, scrunched up, put some distress inks on it, and then again came in with this just to add a little bit just with my finger, so you can see when it's on white it's actually quite vibrant, but just to draw it into the background and make everything match together. And again, there's a little hint of the gilding wax on here as well. So for this one, I was thinking that some of the things that could be added to it, as with this one, are cogs. So you can see here, this is coggish, and then there's some cogs in the background. So some of them are paper cogs, and I appear to have missed, oh no, it's in my hand. This is a paper cog. So this is one that I've just cut out with a die, just out of some brown paper, and then I've put some of the Structure Paste, which is the product that I've not demonstrated, but basically just popped it on the top, and instead of just doing it smoothly, I've stippled it with the palette knife so that it's again got texture. You can see here it's slightly more raised up, and the reason that is because the heat, it was a thicker layer and the heat was on it, so it bubbled a little bit. If you don't like that, you just need to keep the heat moving until it's dried. With this one, again, you can see there's more lumps and bumps on it. This is part of an MDF set. Again, I couldn't tell you where it was from because I've had it for many years and I just delve into it, but there's a whole range of different cog-esque looking things, and it's just a case of putting on something to give it texture. Now I've used the Structure Paste here. You could use the lava paste, you could use the strata paste. It's entirely up to you what you use to give that undulation to the surface. And then I've used on here exactly the same process of black gesso and then the various colours on it just to make it stand out. This here is actually a little metal trinket. Again, it's one that I've delved out of a stash box that I've got. And again, black gesso, and then just started to bring the colours into it. So everything tones in together. But I think that looks quite cool. but my favourite is actually this one, this sewing one. So to get from, where's my blank? There it is. From here to here, you just need to start off with your black gesso, your structure paste, whichever one you decide to use, black gesso, paints, bits and bobs that you want to add on, stick them on with the gel medium in whatever way you want, and you end up with something like this. If you do have any questions or want any clarification over anything that I've talked about, please let me know. If you'd like to know any more about any of the products I've used, please let me know. I will list as many of them as I can in the description below. And hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Thank you for joining me. Bye bye.